Well, all this week we've been hearing from the first book of Samuel. And we hear an interesting story in our first reading today about this battle that the Israelites do with their enemies, the Philistines. They go to battle and it goes horribly for Israel. And so they go back to the camp, they kind of rethink things, and they say, we should bring the Ark of the Covenant, that vessel that holds the Ten Commandments. We'll bring that into battle against them again. So they go and they get the Ark of the Covenant. They pray and praising God, and then they march into battle, and they're defeated again horribly. And not only that, not only do they lose thousands of men, including some of their leaders, they also have the Ark of the Covenant stolen by the Philistines. Now, what's going to happen to the Ark of the Covenant in the chapters between today's reading and tomorrow's reading, those 4 chapters, is the Philistines receive the Ark of the Covenant, then they bring it to their city, and all sorts of bad things start happening to the Philistines. People get sick, they get tumors, so they send it over to another city. The same thing happens. They send it over to another city. The same thing happens. So they say, we got to get rid of this thing. And so what they do is they put the Ark of the Covenant on the backs of cows and send it back to Israel. They said, let's get this moving. I just came up with that right now on the spot for you, listener, right now. Anyways, so going back to our first reading for today, what's interesting is they go into battle, it doesn't go well, and then they turn to God. I think it is often a temptation for us when things don't go our way to then turn to God. Or rather, do we turn to God first? It breaks my heart when a couple comes in asking for help or assistance who has been away from the practice of their faith for a while, who has been having marital problems for years, and they come sort of as a last-ditch effort, almost with the divorce papers in hand. And think, oh, I wish we could have been there with you 5 years ago and prayed with you and helped you along the way. Or maybe a young person whose family has fallen away from the practice of the faith and has gone on the wrong path. And so they think, well, let's go talk to the church, or let's go pray. Let's not put God last as a second option or a fallback plan, but instead put God first. Turn to God when that illness begins to right away run to the sacrament of anointing. When we find ourselves running away from God, to return right away to the sacrament of reconciliation, to return to God first. And so I think there are 2 great examples of how we can do this in our day-to-day life. 2 holy people who showed by the way they lived this turning to God, this holy confidence from the very beginning. One is Blessed Solinus Casey, who has this great phrase. He says, thank God ahead of time. Thank God ahead of time. He was so confident that God would hear and answer his prayers that he would thank God already for answering them before they were answered. Or I think of the second example of Mother Teresa, who would pray what she called a flying novena, where she would pray 9 memorare prayers for a specific intention she had that she needed or wanted, and then she would pray one more, thanking God for answering that prayer. She was thanking God ahead of time. She was already giving thanks to God with that confidence that God was going to take care of her. Maybe today as we go about our day, may we have that same holy confidence, not to turn to God as a last resort, but right away with whatever we need. Turn to God who hears us and answers our prayers when we turn to him first.